And my next guest, as I told you earlier, is Gia Milazzo-Smith. And I know you've been here at least once before, but it might have been twice before.
Yes, I've been here twice before.
Well, see, that means you're a very good guest, and I invited you back for the third time.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here live and in person. I think our last time we did a Zoom interview.
We did, and I'm glad to be live and in person too.
I'm sure.
I'm glad we were able to. We were able to do that, and it kept the show going. But there's nothing like being face to face.
I know there's nothing like being face to face, and we're glad that we have that technology and we can do that when necessary. But it's just so much nicer to be in person.
Well, and in your business, I'm sure you feel that as well.
Definitely.
And what is the exact title of your business?
Designs by Gia, Interior Design and Renovation.
And I understand the renovation part's been a big item because of people having to stay home.
Oh my goodness, yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, when we had the shutdown, it's been 2 years now, that we already had a very large workload of work, but then everybody decided, you know, to start projects at their house while they were home, and, you know, houses went from being, you know, empty all day to everybody's working at home. We've got kids at home, we've got pets at home, and everybody's just trying to manage and make things work. So, and people buying new houses within the last 2 years. So I had a lot of clients buy new houses and decided to renovate. And a lot of people at home.
Meaning it wasn't a brand new house.
Correct.
They bought a house and then decided to change or made changes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so we were able to help people with the sale of their home by doing some small things, and then help them renovate their new house. And of course we had a lot of people looking at doing kitchens and bathrooms and master suites, so we did a lot of that. And we have a waiting list for projects now, which is great, but we're able to bring our A game and still give people, you know, a high quality product. And I love going in and out of houses and being able to see how people live. And everybody's challenged right now because some people are still working from home and they really enjoy working from home and want to be able to make an extra space for that. And, you know, for so long we've seen so many open floor plans, and people are now being a little bit challenged by that. So it's kind of changing a little bit how we use our homes and being able to have some of those private spaces and being able to kind of carve out those areas where you can take a phone call or do a Zoom call without the kids in the same room, or, you know, without a spouse walking through or whatever. So we've been helping people to kind of, you know, situate their houses in ways that they can move forward and be able to do all of the things that they need to do in their house.
Which is always very individual. But we're going to come back to that because I want to back up. I don't want to assume everybody knows you or remembers you from your past appearances. But tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Well, actually, I've been in business over 20 years, and I grew up in a family that actually did a lot of moving and changing of houses and buying and selling of houses, and had a very large creative background, creative parents, and grew up with doing a lot of construction, being around a lot of construction. And you know, you start to pick up things, and ran a paint business a long time ago as well. And professionally just moved my way into the design aspect of it and was gifted in that area. So I've been doing this a long time, and the experiences that I've had in the last 20 years I wouldn't trade for anything. I get to work with wonderful people all day long. Each project is challenging creatively, and being able to make a house beautiful is very easy for me because I've done it a long time, but being able to make it right for the person that lives in it and using my skill to be able to make something that creatively I can make work for someone else is what's challenging, and that's something that I enjoy doing every day. It's an extra layer of challenge to bringing a space together, and when you're able to do that, and I work hard at being able to do that, it's so rewarding to see people be able to really function in that space and enjoy it, and be able to finally walk into a room and say, oh my gosh, I didn't think it would look this great. Now I can really, you know, use this room and function with my family, and to go back even months later and see how that they're still using that space in the way that it was designed, and being able to work with that client again in another space, and you get to know them and know what they like and what they don't like, and being able to say, oh, I know that this would be great and I know she would love it, or I know this family would really, you know, love being able to design a space where they can do this and that. So I enjoy that extra layer of challenge.
That's a very important part, and people don't think about it. Think about renovations or remodeling. okay, make me a beautiful house, but you customize it, and you must get to know them and have a feel for what they will like.
You do, you do. You kind of have to do the job. I mean, there are so many creative people that can do creative and beautiful things, but that challenge of being in the business of interior design and renovation is to be able to let go of what I think should be in home and be able to say, okay, they really want something where they'll be able to do a certain thing. It might not be the way that I would do it if I was doing it for myself, but I know that for them, they like certain things, or they have a certain level of comfort when it comes to color and design elements, and I can kind of pull my skills together and really make something that they love that still really looks pleasing and functions really well, and if the space plan really functions well as far as being able to maneuver around things, and there's so many elements that you really have to think about when you're designing a space, especially kitchens and bathrooms. They're challenging, and to be able to make those spaces blend with the rest of the house and still be something that the client really wants. Someone could come with an idea and it might not necessarily go really well with the rest of their house.
Oh.
And so, you have to really look at the architecture and look at the client and look at what you have there for a budget, what you have there existing, and say, okay, now how can I give them the most of what they want? And sometimes that changes as you're going along in that process. It's like somebody thinks that they know what they want, but maybe it's because they haven't seen anything else, or that they've seen so many different design ideas that they really are having a hard time deciding what's really right for their home and what they would really benefit from. So it's a process. Designing a house for someone is a process. You get to learn about them and be able to create something and bring them along on that process.
I'm smiling as you're saying this because two things. One, in real estate, if you're going to make improvements to your home, kitchen and baths are the top things that are going to impress people. But the other thing is when you say sometimes it's along the way that they realize what they really want or like, because we'll have people say, I don't want a ranch. I don't even want to look at ranches. And then we find a ranch that they absolutely love. So,
and that's what happens to me in the design process.
I bet.
Someone might come to me and say that they want a specific thing, and they might not even be sure of the terminology that they're, giving to me, and I'd say, okay, I think they mean this. And so, so the visuals come in handy. When I sit down with somebody and design a space, I do design drawings, and we have conversations, and I ask questions that really help to kind of pull out, they might show me a photo of a kitchen that they like, but what is it about that photo that they really like? Is it the tile work? Is it the color? Is it the feel of the space? Is it, the cabinetry? Is it, maybe there's some other element there that they're really being drawn to that they can't pinpoint. And so being able to know what questions to ask, and I'm sure you get that as a realtor, being able to really show people some different ideas that they might not have thought of and be able to kind of zoom in on what they really, really want.
There's some psychology involved.
Yes, there's a lot of psychology involved in the whole process. And I think you really do have to be a people person to do these types of jobs, because you do spend a lot of time with a client.
Well, they've hired you, but they also have to put a lot of trust in you.
Exactly.
It's not just, well, Gia did a great job at Lucy's house, so I'll call Gia. I'm sure that you get to know them before.
It's 100%. It's 100% trust, and it's hard. It's hard to give somebody that you don't know very well, or hardly at all, trust. You're spending a lot of money. It's your home. You only might get a chance to do this once.
You can't say, gee, Gans, why did you put out that chartreuse wall? No.
Exactly. And I take that. I take that very seriously. When someone puts their trust in me, I don't take that for granted. That's something that. I do my best work, and usually the best results come from a client that has a higher level of trust, because you might only be able to visualize so much, even with all of the drawings and the visuals and the designs that I do, but until you see that room, you really don't know what it's going to look like. And so so you have to take that trust, and the more trust that a client gives me, usually the happier they are in the end and the better result, because if you can only go as far as what you can envision, then it's harder. It's harder. You'll always hold back a little bit. But I can usually tell how trusting a person is going to be with that, and you earn that along the way, throughout that process. And that's why design is not quick and easy. When you design something for somebody at the level that we're doing, it's not a quick, you're in and out and you have a 2-second conversation with someone and you're designing their space.
You move in with them more or less mentally.
You know what to ask, and you develop, and I've developed ways that I can kind of see the way they live and have those conversations with them and ask probing questions that'll really encourage that discussion about how they're going to use that space, and be able to say, okay, have you thought about this? And they'll be like, well, no, I really haven't thought about that. And just bringing a new fresh set of eyes with a lot of experience to a home where somebody's lived in this home maybe for a while, and you can only kind of envision a certain way or a certain thing that you've seen. And so by being able to come in and say, okay, I've seen this before and we've done this, and I've seen this before and we've done it, there's just so much that you can draw on by having a professional come in and help, even if it's just with the design phase.
How should people be prepared, or how should they prepare themselves if they want to make renovations? Because sometimes you can have your house torn up for quite a while, or you don't use this room until 3 months from now or whatever.
Exactly.
But how should people prepare to have renovations?
Well, I think that's a great question, Barbara, and it's a question I answer it a lot on my blog because I have a lot of articles that refer to that. But in general, I think being prepared with knowing what it is that you're building is the number one tip that I would give people. And a lot of times that's not the case. People are anxious to start. They might not have a design professional on board. They might be just hiring a contractor directly and say, okay, I want to start. I want to build, a kitchen. And you'll always find a contractor who's willing to say, okay, we'll start. And they'll jump in, they'll, start demo and kind of make things up as they go. And that's not a great way to do a renovation, and it will make your renovation go a lot longer. And you still, especially nowadays with the climate of ordering product and all of that, you've got to have the right amount of lead time. And we don't start any project until we have all of those parts. So one of the ways that you can prepare for a renovation is know what you're getting into, know what you're building. And if you don't have a professional help you and guide you to that point, then make sure to do your homework and try to know everything that you're going to have in that space and where it's going to be and the measurements of that space and the measurements of those products, and have all of the details so that you can know exactly what's going to work and what's not.
Have you ever heard talk about the hairdresser who has the messiest hair in town? What does your house look like?
Oh my goodness, I just bought a new house this year, Barbara.
Oh, you did?
Yes, and so on top of the busy year we were having, I moved as well. And I love older homes with a lot of detail, so I bought another older home with a lot of detail. But my house is very nice.
But the way you say that, you like older homes.
I do.
I would see you. I'm just envisioning you deciding what home you're going to buy, and you must be thinking, oh, what I could do with this.
Yes,
one.
I do. Yeah. So working with a realtor is always kind of hard because I can envision what can be done in a space and what can't, and I usually know that I'm going to change everything. So I'm kind of a hard person to buy a house with or to sell a house to as a realtor. You could probably appreciate that. But I love doing things on my own house. I have a passion for it. That's one of the reasons I'm in a business that I'm in, because I enjoy home. I enjoy everything about home. I enjoy being in my own home. I enjoy being in other people's homes. And I want to bring that joy of being able to be in your space and go home at night and enjoy the space that you walk in. I love being able to bring that to my clients as well. So I care about my own house too.
I relate to that because 10 years ago over 10 years now, I made a decision to downsize things in my life. And I sold my big house where I'd lived alone for 12 years, sold it to my daughter and her husband, and immediately built an in-law apartment. But it was one of the smartest things I ever did. And I was really thrilled with it. And I do. I appreciate my home every day. I'm like, good job. That was a good decision to make.
Yeah, when you're around homes all day long, and that's what you do, and that's, your eye is trained to see all those small details. And I had some of my crew members. I have a very wonderful team of craftsmen that work on all of my projects, and luckily I am able to have some work done on my own house as well. And so, when we walk into a house or any space, you see those little details that sometimes people miss. because you do it and your eye is trained to look at those things. And so it makes them very important when you're in your own home, that you can see that there's a little molding that's off, and you can see those minor things that sometimes people don't see in their own space because they're not trained to look for that all day long.
But I do remember us talking about this in the past, and I think you're somewhat unique, and maybe I'm wrong, but, well, you are unique regardless. But you find the right people to do the jobs, and you seem to collect names of the ones you know that are dependable or that are going to work in sync with you.
Yes.
Different types of craftsmen.
Yeah, because I've been doing this for so long, I have a very tight team of craftsmen that have worked for me for many years. You know, I have a cabinet maker that's been with me probably 18 years, and contractors that have been with me for 10 and 18 years. You know, just a lot of people that have been with me a long time. And it's taken a lot of years to develop a team that does the high quality of work. When I design a space, I have to make sure, you know, just like going to a hairdresser, you know, not every hairdresser does the same level of work or is able to do certain things. So when I design something, I have to be sure that I have the quality craftsmen to be able to build it or to implement those designs. You know, the little details that not everybody does. And so I'm very, very blessed and thankful. I have a wonderful team of craftsmen that can take my designs, and I oversee those projects from start to finish and manage them, and being able to see, you know, the quality of work that goes into it, and to see everybody, to have a team that works the extra mile to do things that are not always easy to do, and be able to collaborate with them on details. And I think that is, you know, that's one of the things that has made my business successful over the years. You know, everybody can, there's a lot of designers that can draw pretty pictures and envision spaces, but having that knowledge of the construction background as to what can be done and what can't, and being able to how to finish those little details, and being able to talk and converse in a craftsman language, or to talk with a carpenter and be able to understand, you know, how to return a molding, or all of those little details it's really been a benefit to have that knowledge, and to be able to have a team that will take, you know, the extra time that it takes, and be able to, you know, get a phone call and say, look, this molding, I think if we return it this way, it'll look nice, and if we put this little edge on there, what do you think? And be able to make that final call, and have, you know, boots on the ground at all times, and know that my contractors will pull out a quality project every time.
And you're running a business.
Absolutely.
You've got to have the business acumen as well.
Absolutely.
I have to ask you this. Do you watch HGTV or the brothers? What are they called? The brothers that do all the
yes. You know,
renovations?
I've seen those shows. I don't watch a lot of it. I have to say, I'm busy doing it in real life. And I think I have a lot of clients that watch. And I think it's been a double-edged sword for those of us that are professionals in the field, because it's opened up the curtain to a field that was mysterious before. People now know what designers do and the benefit to having a designer. But they see a very well-edited TV show in which things happen, and you probably know this too from the real estate shows. You see a very well-edited version of the process, and you're not seeing the whole thing. And so, you know, people's expectations of what is actually real and not real and able to be done. You know, certain states have different building codes, and you have to follow those building codes, and they differ from what you see on television. So that's sometimes a challenge. But I think a lot of people do realize that they're seeing a TV show, and it's great because they see what can actually, the transformations that can happen. And that's wonderful for us, because people are now a little bit more trusting and open to having those transformations, or open to having help, you know. And there's nothing worse than seeing somebody that tries to do a project themselves and spends twice as much money as if they had hired a professional to do that project, and they're not getting professional results in the end. And sometimes they come back and call a professional in later, and there's only so much you can do because they've spent a majority of their budget, and they're trying to kind of, you know, fix things in the end. Then there is really only so much you can do at that point without going backwards.
Now, budget, that's a good good topic you just brought up. I think you have to, I would think if you're going to do renovations, you need to be realistic about what is practical for you.
Absolutely.
Just because the next door neighbor spent $2 million on her house doesn't mean you could do that.
That's right. And just because you saw it on HGTV and they spent a certain amount doesn't mean it's going to cost that in your house. Every house is so unique. You know, you've got plumbing, you've got electrical, you've got the actual building itself, and then you have the design of, you know, what you're trying to make. So you have to look at all of those things. You know, the same type of a kitchen in someone else's house might cost a different price because you're looking at a different set of circumstances. You know, the tile might be the same tile, but all of the labor involved in doing the plumbing, doing the electrical, doing the construction, especially in living in an area where we do have a lot of older homes, you know, there are challenges with being able to do those construction projects, and of course you have to be prepared for some unexpected things. So that being said, we like to be as prepared as we can be. So when I design a space, after I design a space and present it to a homeowner, my next step in order to start putting some numbers on a project like this, of course I have some preliminary conversation about budget before we get to this point. But when we design a space, then we want to see what does this space actually cost to build in this house, you know. So using that design as our guide and using that home, I bring in my entire crew at once, my carpenter, my electrician, my plumber, my cabinet maker. We'll look at the entire design, we'll look at what we're going to try and build, and we'll look at the house itself. We'll look at the circumstances that we can see. We will anticipate circumstances that we perhaps might run into with things that we can't see based on all of our collective experience. And we will try to investigate a little bit further on site and come up with a quoted cost of the entire project. That gives my clients a really good idea of the reality of what the project is going to cost. And of course, estimating an overage amount for anything the client might want to add to the project while you're at it, or unexpected things. So there's a formula that we use to kind of go through and a process that we use to get to that point. But we don't go in and just kind of throw out a random number. I would rather, spend the time and do a thorough investigation of the project. We have a thorough design. We know exactly what's going to be built, the exact materials that are going to be used, and that's quite a bit of information that can give us an estimation of costs. So that's the process that we use when we do every project.
That's very thorough. But it also reminded me, the big house I used to own that I sold to my daughter, when I bought it, it was new construction, but it sat on the market a while, and there were finishing touches that could be put on it. And one of them, I'm not good at those kind of decisions, but one of the things that was challenging to me is you're in a room full of light fixtures.
Yes.
And you've got to pick your light fixture, and you can't visualize what it's going to look like in the house. And you sometimes think, well, I'm only going to do this once, so I'm going to get the more expensive one.
Yes.
And before you know it, cha-ching, cha-ching.
That's right. It adds up quick.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important to have those discussions early on, like I do with my clients. We discuss those things before we even sit down to do a design. And, we discuss the reality of what it does cost to do construction, the type of project that they might be looking at doing in the house that they are currently living in. And we have some of those early preliminary discussions with the client. And most people do have a hard time visualizing. That's why doing a design in the beginning, before you start construction, is so important, because most people don't have a really good idea of scale and how things kind of fit together. And being able to just go out and buy a light individually, without looking at everything else and how it's going to look with everything else, the scale of it in the room, the placement of it in the room, all of those things are so important with the overall look, but they're certainly really important with the budget, because if you start to make those decisions while you're in progress, and they're wrong decisions, and you decide, okay, this light doesn't fit, doesn't look good with the size island that I have, I overestimated the size of my ceiling, and now this light's not going to work over my dining room table. Those things happen when you make those decisions in progress, and you wind up having to do some backtracking, which costs more.
I'm looking at the clock, and I'm debating which topic I'm going to throw out at you. Okay, so you can pick. One is deadlines, how you deal with deadlines, and especially it's tough now because of materials and everything else. The other one is, I believe you advise that people don't try to save money by doing the painting themselves. Now, which one do you want to talk about?
We can do either one. We can do either one.
We've only got 4 minutes.
We've got 4 minutes. Let's talk about deadlines then.
Okay, deadlines.
Okay. Deadlines are great when you're doing something that's very predictable. When you're doing a custom home and you're dealing with custom finishes and custom fabric work and maybe a specific wallpaper that's special ordered or furnishings that has been special ordered, we can estimate what those lead times might be, but they're much longer than if you were to run out and buy a roll of wallpaper at a store, which you can barely do that anymore. But custom finishes do take longer. So that being said, we do give everyone a really good idea of the length of the time of the project before we start. Now, because of things being kind of backed up and materials taking a little bit longer and projects taking a little bit longer than usual, when we go into a house, people always add things as well. So things always do take a little bit longer than what we think. And I always tell my clients that to begin with, because when we're in your house and you say, can you do this as well and can you add this, we'll certainly do it. And then when we get to the next person's house, we'll do it for them as well. So we make sure that people know what the realistic lead time is from the get-go. And we do our best to keep updating them throughout the project as to if there are any changes or things that happen in the beginning, in the middle of the project that we need to notify them about. We let them know as we go.
Well said. And you mentioned wallpaper. Is it in or out now?
Wallpaper's in.
It's back in.
Wallpaper's in.
Okay, because that keeps fluctuating.
I know.
Anyway, thank you so much. You are so knowledgeable, and I think we got a lot of good points in.
We did get a lot of good points. Thank you so much. You've been great, as always. I'm always thrilled to come see you.
Well, thank you. My pleasure, and I appreciate you being here. And I hope you'll join me again next week. I'm going to have Professor Gail Steele from the Theater at the Mount, Mount Wachusett. And Gail hasn't been with us for a long time, so I'm looking forward to seeing her. And another repeat performer who is one of my favorites is Irene Hernandez, and she is a motivational speaker, among other things. So I promise you, if you watch next week, you will be inspired, because Irene is so motivational. And Gail's going to tell us about what's going on at Theater at the Mount, and they are back running. There is a season. There's 4 plays coming up, so I'll be here. I hope you will join me too. This is Barbara Foster saying good night and God bless you.